Welcome to the Shoot to Ill podcast. My name is Martin Depict. I'm a photographer, videographer, and graphic designer here in LA. Episode 3, let's get right into it. So first off, I want to just mention that I just finished my first project on the Shoot to Ill Patreon. I'm really proud of it. I went into this wanting to finish, a really good portfolio piece, and I definitely feel like I did that. And it's honestly, I mentioned this in my live stream, but I was speaking to someone this week about the difference between paid work and then work that you do for fun. And the difference, or the way that I explained it, was that when you're doing work for fun, the target that you're aiming at is this big. Like you're aiming at a huge target, and really all that you're aiming at when you're doing something for fun is that you're just trying to get on the board. Like, as long as you get close to as what you envisioned or what you wanted, it's a success in your mind. But when it comes to paid work or work for clients, the target gets smaller and smaller, and it gets smaller. Like they see something specific in a magazine, they want a specific type of lighting, they want it to be, they want specific makeup. It goes on and on, like until it's this close, until it's this small, and it's tough. Like obviously when you're shooting for clients and you're giving a lot of sort of like guidelines and rules and stuff. The difference is like we get into this industry wanting to do a lot of this stuff for fun. But I mean, I'm not gonna say that when you're getting projects done and there's definitely a little bit of pressure behind it, like it could definitely be stressful. But when you get those projects done, man, it feels good. Especially when you hit it. When you hit those projects and you get those projects done exactly the way that they wanted them, and it's a complete home run, it feels good, man. It's a really good feeling. It's hard to explain. But yeah, I'm not complaining about those clients and stuff. It's more of like a challenge for creatives and us. But I wanted to, I guess, like I go into that saying that because one of my friends, her name is Chrislam, who I went to college with. Chrislam and I worked together at Just Fab and Fabletics, and she actually helped me get the job there as I was sort of getting out of another job. I think this was like 2013. I think it was the end of 2013. Damn, we're getting old. But she had asked me to talk about advice for emerging artists, photographers, or graphic designers, and then how I got into photography. And that's like a super long story. But I guess we can get into it. So I got into photography in high school, and I didn't take any photography classes in high school. I wasn't on the yearbook team. I wasn't in yearbook or anything like that involved photography. I just gravitated to taking pictures. I was definitely a little bit of a loner. I had some friends, but I didn't break out and started making, myself seen, I guess, in high school till the last 2 years of high school. And that was mainly because of some of my good friends that I was hanging out with. They ended up, they were way more popular than I was. And I was just like that guy that sort of tagged along with them. So I was always known as, this person's friend, and it never bothered me or anything like that. But it was, that was just the type of person that I was. But I would go to all these parties in high school and stuff, and I had a little point and shoot Samsung camera, like a little digital camera that took like 2 megapixel photos, and I would take photos of everything, and shit would get wild. It would, back in the early 2000s, kids. We were kids. We were doing a lot of dumb shit. But yeah, just like I would take photos of everything: people kissing people they weren't supposed to be kissing, people throwing up, uh, after drinking things they weren't supposed to be drinking. And then I would take all those photos and post them on MySpace back then. And so it would just go up on my MySpace, and I would just put an album like, oh, so and so's party on this day. And then I would get like people would hit me up the following Monday when we get back to school and just like, take all those photos down. They would all get pissed. Some of them didn't care. But it was funny to just sort of like, to just sort of like that was how I fell in love with this. It was just sort of like a very, just capturing moments and not necessarily caring. I mean, a lot of the times I was just that guy taking pictures, and also enjoying myself at the party. So, I took a lot of photos back then, and I continued to take photos into my college career. I didn't go to FITM right away. I did a year in community college, and in that community college, I did take film photography. I did take black and white photography. I did take digital photography, and I started getting into a little bit of graphic design. And then as I sort of finished out those classes, like I think some of my teachers, or one teacher specifically, could tell that I really enjoyed shooting, and this was in my film photography class. He could see that I really enjoyed shooting, and then I remember one day I ran late to a class, and back then we had to go pick up a camera to borrow from the school, and then go to the class. So we would go to a separate area of the school, pick up the camera, and then go to class. By the time I had got to school, because I was late, they were out of the cameras that I needed to borrow for the class. So because of that, I showed up to class without a camera, and typically when that happened, you would just sort of you would partner up with someone and just use the same roll of film or camera as them. And this time, my teacher, I told him, I was like, oh yeah, I didn't get to the place in time to get the camera. So he just reached in his bag and handed me a Nikon F4 or F5. It was one of those. It was a really higher end film camera. And it had a 50 millimeter on it. It was a pretty basic setup, but so the project that day was just capturing silhouettes, and then with a secondary focus on framing and yeah. So I walked around. So we all just sort of like got our project, and then we just all started walking around school. And I remembered walking around campus and taking photos, and it was just like mind blowing to me. Just like the fact that I was holding this camera, to me, I don't know. It wasn't necessarily about the gear, but it was definitely like a big jump from using like the little Canon AE1s that they would give us, so jumping from that to this, Nikon F5 was a big sort of like moment for me. And then I definitely walked out of that class that day going like, damn, like I think this is what I want to do. And I think probably like a month later, I sort of started trying to see like what jobs could I get around where I lived. And I went to high school and college in Palmdale. I guess the AV is the Antelope Valley is like, I guess, the bigger county there. And we don't really have like a lot of like, they have like some photo studios there, but those photo studios are mainly there to shoot like high school portraits or school portraits. That's pretty much it. Maybe some weddings as well, but it was pretty much it. It was just like the little offices there for photography, or the little companies there for photography, were just taking high school portraits and weddings. And I was like, this is not what I want to do. Um, so I just was like, fuck it, like I like that. I think it was literally the next semester after that. Um, I started taking graphic design courses, and that graphic design school. I mean, not graphic design school. The graphic design really attracted me because I sort of started. We did this one project where we had to just make a magazine cover. And so we messed around with Photoshop and InDesign, and I was like, man, this is great. Like, this is sort of takes the two things that I really like, graphic design and photography, and sort of mashes them together. And I had realized, I was like, this is it. Like, this is sort of like a round of what I want to do. So I decided to go to FITM. Mainly, it was very expensive, but mainly I wanted to go to FITM because of their work placement program. Like, they had a really high percentage of students that they were able to place in jobs after they graduated, especially in the graphic design majors. Like, graphic design majors definitely were able to get jobs after school, and so I saw that as like a big plus, because I think like schools a lot of the times, it's weird, right? You can go to school and major in something, and then you don't know if you're gonna work in that industry or not after. I've seen it happen with friends and stuff, so it's tough. It's weird. So that was definitely like a big plus, and I know it was really expensive. And to me, it was between FITM and Otis, and Otis was attractive to me. But it was a little bit more expensive, and then I think like the crowd was just not necessarily my crowd. I get the film crowd was not my crowd either. The school was mainly women and girls, just a lot of fashion students. So there was not a lot of guys there. I think the school was maybe 10% guys, and most of them were graphic design majors. And I think like everyone there could tell. Like, if a guy walked into an elevator, then most likely they were a graphic design major. And it was it was a great experience. It definitely sort of like opened my eyes, and I got to learn a lot of cool things and meet a lot of cool people. Chrislam being one of them. And graphic designers, we all took the same classes, so it was not like we were just in each other's classes for like a few, for a few semesters. Like, no, we saw each other almost the whole time that we were there. And it was great. It was a really great experience. Halfway through my school career there, you can start interning in your second year. So I started putting requests in for internships, and I went to one of the first ones that they sort of send me on an interview for was Volcom, and Volcom was in Costa Mesa, and I was working at Vans at the time, so I was working at the mall selling shoes. I had worked at Vans. Actually, the crazy story that how I got the job at Vans was that I was moving from Palmdale to LA, and I had called the district manager of the Vans store, because this store at the time was not open yet in Fox Hills. This was in Culver City, Fox Hills Mall. And I called the district manager and I said, "Hey, I'm getting ready to go to school in downtown LA. I know that this store is about to open. I'd really love an opportunity to work there. My goal is to like work my way up and potentially work and be a graphic designer at Vans." That was sort of like my style back then. I did not skate. I tried when I was younger, hurt myself really bad, did not skate again. But I was really into that sort of culture, so I knew a lot of the people skating, Jeff Raleigh, and Lizard King, all those guys that were like big back then. And I remember, like, I didn't get a call back from her, but I did get a call back from the manager of the Culver City store, and she just asked to, come and interview. And so I went and I went to the Fox Hills Mall, sat down with her, and we talked for about 10 minutes. And then she, like, after the 10 minutes, she was like, "Okay, well, you're hired," because, the call came from from up above. It came from the district manager. And I don't know. Like honestly, I never got a chance to thank that lady. But that was just like a really cool situation. I ended up becoming a manager at Vans and stuff, and worked my way up a little bit there. But it was cool. Anyway, going back to the Volcom story. So I went into Volcom and I interviewed with David Pierce, who David was, I consider him the first person to give me my first photography check. Um, Keep in mind all this time through, like I was still learning photography. I was still teaching myself stuff. So I had bought really cheap lights like Alien Bees, and I was using a Nikon D90, which is not a full frame camera. But I ended up upgrading to a Nikon D3S, and I was like getting into it. I was really getting into photography. And so I ended up getting the internship at Volcom. And the reason why was because, like, I remember him handing me the lookbook or the catalog for Volcom. And I was just flipping through them. And as I was flipping through them, I recognized some of the skaters, and he sort of like gauged that I was sort of familiar with all this stuff. Volcom, although I was familiar with the skating side of it, Volcom was very much more into like the surfing side of the culture that day or that time. And I was not a surfer. I had not picked up a surfboard. I'm still not one, so that's not what I ever got into. But it was cool. It was cool to just sort of like be in that sort of like scene. And I remember going into interning there, and the projects that they gave me were really cool. A lot of them at first were sort of like resizing ads. So we would do ads. They would give me ads that were already sort of like done and mocked up for magazines. Unfortunately, some magazines use different aspect ratios. Why? I have no idea. It's definitely more expensive to do that shit on a different size paper. So I have no idea why the fuck they did that. They should have just gone with the fucking standard size paper. That's just a design ick of mine. Like, why go with the more expensive? If you're going to go with the more expensive option, it should be for a fucking reason. Anyway, getting back to it. I was resizing ads at first. Then it came down to learning how to repeat prints. So they would give me a file with like things like graphics and doodles and stuff on it, and they were like, make this into a repeatable print. And that was just sort of fun for me. Like it wasn't too hard, I guess. Like once you knew how to use Illustrator and Photoshop, like all this stuff just sort of you really got into it. And then they started giving me more jobs like creating custom graphics. They did a lot of what is it called back then? It was like what's it called when you cut out letters from from magazines and then you sort of just collage. They used a collage style back then. So I would sort of like, they had papers or graphics that they would use, and then I would sort of have to, you would cut those letters out and just sort of like, arrange those to sort of spell out what you wanted to spell out. And there was like different textures that you would use. So a lot of crinkle cut paper, a lot of rips that you would use, and all that stuff. Just sort of, it was cool. It was really cool. And honestly, I think like that style of graphic design was sort of sped my education up, because it was a lot of things that I don't think I would have even learned. I don't think I would have even touched if I didn't work there. But anyway, that internship was only supposed to be for 3 months. At the end of that third month, we would shoot ecom photos. I would assist on ecom photo shoots, and I think it was my last day landed on one of those shoots, and we shot with this guy named Big Jim. I think his name was Big Jim. It was Big something. And Big Jim was a photographer that was well known, that shot a lot of the ecom stuff for the brands down in Costa Mesa. So I'm assuming he shot for Vans, for Volcom, for Rip Curl, for DC, for all those brands. He probably shot all their ecom stuff. And I guess the shoot had been canceled, or he didn't show up because it wasn't a lot of products that they needed shot. And I sort of just told I told Davin, who had given me the job originally, who was my creative director, I think. I'm pretty sure it was the creative director. Davin himself is like an amazing person. Like he had worked his way up at Volcom from working in the mailroom to creative director. So it was just really cool to just be at a company that was like that. That was you definitely tell that they sort of like valued the people that work there. So anyway, I told Davin, I was like, hey, like I can shoot this stuff. Like we have the studio here, we have a camera here, we have all the lights here, and he gave me a shot. So I went down into the studio by myself, set up all the lights. Well, the lights were already set up, but I adjusted everything the way they needed to be adjusted, and then I spent all day going up and down the ladder, just laying the clothing down flat, taking the photo, and then moving on to the next one. Then after I was done with that, taking those photos into Lightroom, color correcting everything. So I sat there in my cubicle with a bin full of clothes, holding it up to the light, and then just making sure that the colors match from what I was holding to what I saw on the computer. And then I exported those photos, sent them to the catalog team. And I think that day, at the end of the day, Davin came to my cubicle and handed me a check for the photography that I had done. And I was stoked. I was really excited because I did not expect that. And I thought it was amazing. And then I ended up staying another 3 months there. So I ended up doing another 3 months at Volcom. I even freelanced there for a while after that. It was such an amazing experience. And then I graduated. So we graduated. After you graduate, you have 6 months, I think. I think it's 6 months or 9 months. I'm pretty sure it's 6 months. You have 6 months to look for a job and get a job before your student loan bills start coming in. I think I had made it to like the last month before finding a job, and the only job that I was able to get as a sort of like entry-level designer was down in San Diego I was just a designer, assistant designer, I guess, to the head designer there, Brian Figueroa. Brian, another amazing person I got the opportunity to work for. And I worked there for a year. And it was tough for me because I had to move down to San Diego. At the time, it sort of like, I had just gotten out of a relationship and I didn't have a lot of friends down there. I had made a big mistake in sort of like signing a lease at an apartment that sort of like didn't leave me a lot of extra money, or after rent and everything, I didn't have a lot of extra money. So I definitely learned a lot financially and everything, just sort of like making sure that I think, I don't know. I was so dumb. Like, I think that they were like, oh, you're going to get paid this much. And I was like, okay, cool. Then I have, I'll probably just spend this much on an apartment, and then not really counting how much it's going to cost for the bills, for like utilities, and then like how much you're going to need for food or shit that you need for around the house, like fucking furniture and shit. I was just dumb. I didn't take any of that into account, and I just fucking picked the spot that I thought was cool, and that was that. And so it was me and my cat. That's it. In living there for a year, and learned a lot there. Definitely stepped up my photography game because I was shooting all their products. I actually shot their like a full catalog and some portraits of like professional gamers. I don't know if I mentioned the name of the company that I worked there. It was for Gunner Optics. So Gunner Optics makes like these yellow tinted glasses that a lot of the pro gamers back then wore. I think they're still around as well. But it was cool to just sort of be in that space creatively. And I was given a good amount of freedom creatively to sort of just mess around and shoot what I thought was cool within a certain boundary, obviously, of the products. And obviously the year ended and my lease was up, and I had mentioned to my boss, Bryant, that I I was not liking it down there. I didn't like living down there in Carlsbad in San Diego, North San Diego. So I ended up moving back, and they let me go, and almost right away I found another job in downtown LA working for a startup fashion company. So this startup fashion company was working for this Nigerian designer. Still work with her to this day, Falake. Again, really amazing designer, really amazing person. Still shoot her e-com stuff to this day on her website. So I'm really grateful to just continue to have her as a client. But I worked at her company, and she back then had a partner. At this company, I did file management. So I would sort of like manage all the files that would go up and be put up on the shop. I would do all the design for the email blasts. I would shoot all the photography, not just for the company, but also for her fashion blog that got it was actually a pretty popular fashion blog that got a lot of hits. So all the photography on there, and I did that for a year. And then at the end of that year, I built up my courage to ask for a raise. And Falake back then had a partner, and the partner wasn't involved a lot in the day to day, but he was definitely the financial. He definitely provided a lot of the financial backing for the company. And so when we sat down and we talked, and I asked him for a raise, it sort of took like a different spin, because I remember him telling me, he was like, you're replaceable, right? And when he said that, I didn't want to like see red or get upset or anything. I was just like, okay, you know what? Like, I can already see this isn't going to go the way that I expected to. So I'm just gonna, pack my stuff and go. And so I walked out of that and left the company, and that was that. And then what was crazy is that that building that I worked at was a block away from FITM. So I walked out of FITM, put my stuff in my car, walked out of that building. I'm sorry. I walked out of that building, put my stuff in the car, and then I walked to FITM a block away, and I went straight to the career advisor's office. And I told them, I was like, hey, I need a job. Here's my experience, and I'm just going to send you an updated resume. And then they told me that there was an opening for a designer position at Just Fab it was just Fab back then. Then it had sort of expanded into other businesses that I think now it's called Textile. So, and then they also said that Chrislam worked there. So I remember sending Chris a text, and I was like, yo, like, I'm going to apply for this job. And if you guys don't know, sometimes like when you're working at a certain company, and you can get like a referral bonus if you refer someone to fill a position. So if I did good, if I kept my job, it didn't fuck up, Chrislam would get a nice little bonus after 3 months, I think it was, after my probation period. So I was there. I worked there for another almost 2 years. And then I remember I was one of the team that helped launch Fabletics. I was part of the acquisition team that helped launch Fabletics. So we ran a lot of ads everywhere, wherever you can imagine. I didn't do any of the TV spots or anything like that. It was a lot of the web ads. So MSN, Google, Yahoo, Facebook, even Spotify takeovers, like all this stuff. Like I helped lay out a lot of them, even designed landing pages. So I learned a lot there, a lot of it analytically, what colors work. There's a lot more that goes into a lot of this marketing stuff, and I can get into that another episode. But it was a really good learning experience working there. But I remember towards the end of me being there was an opportunity or a position open for a photographer. And I wanted to switch it up. I was like, I've been doing the graphic design stuff for a while, and like I know that I've been still shooting, taking photos this whole time. Um, and I was like, man, I want to, I was freelancing, taking photos for Volcom and freelancing, taking photos for um, other companies like Jujubee, and just doing a bunch of stuff, ecom photos. So it was just, I was doing a lot, but I wanted to do more in photography. So I remember there being a position open. I talked to the people there, applied for the position, and I never even got a call or asked to interview for it or anything. And I just remember being really bummed about that. And I remember there was like a this was a very salty thing of me to do. But I remember that we would do these like monthly meetings or weekly meetings where like we would all just sort of like sit on these auditorium steps, and they they had announced that they had found a new photographer, and they introduced her to everyone, and they asked everyone to go and say something, about themselves. And then when it came to me, I was like, yeah, like I'm a photographer too, and it just moved on to the next person. But I was salty, and I was just ready to go, and so I had left that job and decided to go full time with photography at that point. And so I had left that job. I think this was at the end of 2015, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna do one of these Europe trips by myself. So I went to Europe for 30 days. That was amazing. Did Europe in like counterclockwise. So I started in London, went down to France, all the way to the south of France, to Spain, then back up all the way to like Germany, and then ended my trip in Netherlands, and then went back to Paris after the Netherlands. And it was amazing. Like, such an amazing experience. I took a lot of amazing photos, uploaded all the photos that I took as I was sort of like on this trip. And it sort of really opened my mind, like my eyes to stuff. And I remember being on that trip, I got a text by my friend Noah, who is now, who I've worked with now for, I mean, I've probably known him for 9 years, but we've probably worked together for 8 years now. Yeah, it's crazy. And he called me and he said that they needed help with like photography and graphic design stuff. So they had asked me to come in, and they had told me what they were doing. And there was a boutique marketing agency that concentrated on sort of like content creation for their clients. And I was like, cool, this is great. And they give me access to the studio, so it just felt like a really good fit. And we did, that company turned into this company called French Fry that I still help with. And we started Palms Premium Pre-Rolls, which is a cannabis brand, mostly because we were having meetings with a lot of cannabis companies. This was before COVID. We were having a lot of meetings with cannabis companies, and then they would just sort of like flake on us or ghost us. And so after like the couple clients that we had or people that we talked to, Noah was just like, yo, let's just fucking start our own shit. And, him and Tyler co-founded it, and I just helped design everything. So I was definitely like I had my hand in all that stuff. It was, design the packaging and the logo and all that stuff. And so all that, Palms is in almost every dispensary here in LA. And if it's not, you should definitely ask for us, because I definitely recommend it. We did a collab with Justin Bieber last year. It's just been like a really cool, not 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I think. It's just been a really cool experience to work with everyone that I've worked with. But it's been, I think, the biggest thing that I've learned throughout this whole experience, and I've shot, like, I guess how I got more into photography is that when, as I was working at Just Fab and Fabletics and working for Noah and French Fry, there was just like this sense of I started sort of giving myself a little bit more leeway on shooting stuff. And back then I was just shooting a lot of models. I shot with one model for 2.5 years, almost exclusively, and then that sort of really helped my following. And after that, I sort of branched out and started working with a lot more models, and now I'm working with a lot of girls, helping them out with their OnlyFans content and stuff like that, which I know is not probably what Chrislyn wants me to talk about with their students. So sorry if she told you to listen to this, and and if you hear that. But content is content. Content is king, I guess I should say, is what people say. Everyone needs the content. Doesn't matter who you are. Big companies, small companies, influencers. You can always sort of be. There's always a position behind the camera that you can help with. Always. It doesn't matter what it is. Assisting, production assistants. I have a friend that sort of like helps wrangle cars for production for movie and show productions, which is really cool. So like if you just end up liking something enough, you can learn to offer it in some way creatively. And I guess like my advice for emerging artists, photographers, and graphic designers would be, just remember to have fun with it. And like I said earlier, like there's going to be times where it's not fun, and you will have some pressure on you, and you will feel like your back is against the wall. But like, to me, I guess I could put it in a sports reference. That's sort of like the Game 7 reference, right? Like, so it's down to the last minute, and you have to just sort of like do what you can to get it done. And when you do get it done, it feels good. It feels really good to sort of just know that you did your best. And but besides those times where the pressure definitely gets a little bit heavy, it's good to just remind yourself that this is supposed to be for fun. And it's good to just take on projects and stuff that you want to do for fun on your own. And me as someone who's been doing this for someone who's been doing this for I can never even tell, 14 years, almost 13 years. It's really cool to look back on everything and just sort of see how much I've grown, not just as a person, but also as a designer, how my tastes have evolved. Going back to how we worked in class, and, you were given these projects that, the only thing, I mean, grades are important, but it's not as important as sort of like your livelihood, right? Like, it's a completely different game when you're playing for money. When you're working for money. So now it's just, I've sort of put myself in this position, or in this mindset now, to where like I want to do my absolute best that I can, if I can. And I think that you have to give yourself that room, and I say if I can, because a lot of the times certain factors or certain things pop up that are out of your control, and you can't do your absolute best with things that you can't control, when things that you can't control go wrong. But you can sort of work with what you got and sort of do your absolute best with what is given to you. So, and I guess an example would be, you go to a shoot, or a client gives you a design project, and then, they originally tell you that you have 4 weeks to get it done. And then, a couple of days later, they're like, oh, I need this by tomorrow. or I need, a few of these by tomorrow, and stuff like that. And that, I think, like, just have your ducks in order, have a good agreement in line, so that way, like, If there is something that needs to be done rushed, that you get paid enough for the time that you're putting in it. Yeah, but just remember to not overwork yourself, man. I think like we're definitely, a lot of us now are sort of like coming to this point where we all understand what burnout is, and I used to be one of the people that used to think that burnout was just like an excuse because I worked hard, like my whole life, like I started working and doing jobs when I was like 12 just to make like extra money, just because I was the oldest, and like my mom couldn't afford to get me like nice shoes and stuff, so I wanted to try to get some money to try to afford some of that stuff for myself. And you have to just sort of, that was just my work ethic. I thought that you had to work hard. I didn't think there was any other option. And then now I think it's very important to put yourself first in a lot of situations. Make sure that you're being taken care of. Make sure that you're taking care of yourself mentally, physically, emotionally. And I think a lot of people understand that now. So I don't think a lot of people are going to push too much on that. Yeah, I don't know. I hope that helps. That was a much longer story and rant than I expected. But I think it was a good one to get out of there. It's nice to sort of like look back and think, just sort of like know where what I've done, what my accomplishments have been up to this point. It's nice to sort of just, think back on those and everything that I've done. Just give myself a nice pat on the back, because I definitely don't do that as often as I need to. But yeah, damn, I have more stuff. I was actually prepared and I had topics written down, and I wanted to talk about more stuff. But you know what? We're hitting that 40-minute mark, and we can save those topics for another time. So yeah, I'm just gonna end this here, and say thank you guys for watching this and listening to this. I hope it was helpful for anyone out there listening. Just sort of remember to keep it fun and light. But yeah, if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, leave me a good review. If you're watching this on YouTube, leave me a good comment, like the video. It'll help this video get out there a little bit more. And yeah, that's it. Keep shooting. Peace.